Let's get right to our panel. Joining us now is McKay Coppins of BuzzFeed.com, Erin Carmone, national reporter for MSNBC.com, and Brian Beutler of Salon. Okay, McKay, there is so much rich psychological stuff to deal with here. You've got Bill Kristol from the neoconservatives. You've got this obsession with mission accomplished. All of sort of George W. Bush kind of iconography creeping back in, but not from Democrats, from Republicans, from the Rupert Murdochian Wall Street Journal. How did George W. Bush go from being the beloved president who was the icon of the right to a dirty word?
Right, that's what's so fascinating here. This comes at a time when Republicans are very happy to note that George W. Bush's approval ratings, like all presidents after they leave office, have gone up. And, you know, a few weeks ago, we heard a lot of conservatives say George W. Bush has a better approval rating than Barack Obama even, right? And yet it's conservatives and Republicans who are invoking him as, you know, the best dig they can get in at Obama is comparing him to George W. Bush. It does show how far the Republican Party has drifted in various directions, mind you, not in one direction, but away from the Bush years, and they are still trying to distance themselves from that.
And I mean, and Brian, it's fascinating. I mean, we've had mission accomplished. We've had things being called Obama's Katrina. It literally does feel like insinuating things are his Iraq. I mean, are we literally going to have the right replay the entirety of the Bush presidency, but as a way to attack Barack Obama?
Well, I think that any of Bush's liabilities are sort of fair game if you're a Republican. I mean, if you think about it this way, one way to, I mean, there are two ways to rehabilitate your image after you've damaged it, either with something like Iraq or Katrina. One is to do the hard work of repairing your reputation by governing well again. The other is to sort of neutralize the damage by tarring your opponent with the same sort of liability. And I think that that's why the analogies to Katrina and Iraq have been so prevalent for the last couple of weeks. And that if in 6 years from now, if Republicans repeal Obamacare and try to implement Paul Ryan care, and it's a implementation debacle, then Democrats will be saying that it's worse than the Obamacare implementation was. It's just an easy way to kind of balance things out when you've kind of screwed up your own image.
But I mean, Erin, it does feel like trolling. It feels like a combination of trolling and like working out some deep psychological issues on the right. I mean, you've covered the right. Is this trolling or is it psychosis or sort of a psychological reaction to disappointment in Bush?
I mean, I would say that if I were President Obama, I'd say, like, where's my jet landing? Where's my flight suit? There is something deeply disrespectful about these analogies, I think, when you think about the number of casualties of Americans, both in Katrina and in the Iraq War. I mean, yes, all of us who were literature majors are big fans of metaphor, but there has to be some sense of proportion between a website that has bad back end and, you know, this sort of like catastrophes that cost people's lives. But I think, you know, the right has to basically come up with a narrative that explains the Bush years. And that's basically what we've seen in part with the Tea Party. We've been, you know, either it was Bush wasn't conservative enough, he was surrounded by people who were incompetent. I mean, there are all of these, a lot of the conservative attacks on Obama allow them to kind of like shift responsibility for what happened in those years, or to say we're a new conservatism, we're the one true conservatism, and we're not going to fall into the same sort of pitfalls that the Bush administration did.
No, McKay, and it does feel like in a lot of ways, even sort of the disrespect toward the president, I think there are a lot of reasons for it, but some of it does seem to be also rooted in this idea that what was done to our guy, we're going to do twice over to your guy. And so that we're at a point where Republicans can't even allow President Obama to succeed with a program rooted in conservative ideas because he's your guy, so we have to take him down.
Well, you do see this in various facets on the right, that the dominant goal often on the right these days, and this hasn't always been true, but now, is they want to make their opponents angry. More than they want to beat them, more than they want to accomplish something else. And this is part of being the party out of power, right? But the party out of power, they want to make liberals angry. They want to troll them. I think that the Chiron kind of has it right, that this is trolling. This is saying whatever you can to try to provoke them, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's where the Bush analogies come from. They know that liberals, for, you know, his two terms in office, was the most hated man on the left, right? And so they say, what's the way we can most get them angry? We'll compare them to Bush. We'll compare Obama to Bush.
And a party that is still very much in the thrall of Rush Limbaugh and Sarah Palin has to have trolling at the center of its raison d'etre.
Yeah, and has to also have sort of the same sort of media style at the center of its raison d'etre. At the risk of making another, Brian, sort of inappropriate analogy, it does in a way feel like this Bill Kristol media tour, where he's saying that there's this secret Paul Ryan plan that's going to solve health care better than the Affordable Care Act. Does feel a little bit like Nixon's secret plan to get out of Vietnam, right? There doesn't seem to be any actual substance to the plan, or am I wrong?
Well, I mean, I might eat my words for saying this. My hunch is that we're not going to see like a scorable piece of legislation come out of the Republican Party. But that doesn't mean that, you can't kind of ascertain what Paul Ryan and, the sort of mainstream of the House Republican caucus believes about what should replace Obamacare if it were to ever be replaced.
And what is that? Please help us.
Yeah, I mean, there's no consensus plan, and so even there can't be a vote on a replace. There can only be a vote on a repeal. But they from his old roadmap, which became the sort of baseline for his budget, there's privatizing Medicare, devolving Medicaid back to the states. There's creating but not really financing high-risk pools in states so that people with pre-existing conditions can get covered. There's selling insurance across state lines, which would sort of devolve the quality of insurance that's available for healthy people on the individual market. These ideas have been around on the right forever. They're not really workable, I don't think, as a comprehensive alternative to Obamacare that really does sort of dot all the I's and cross all the T's that you need to get everybody insured. And so I imagine that what you're going to see is sort of like a focus grouped repackaging of those sorts of ideas.
Same ideas, right?
Right, but I'd be very surprised if they came out with a bill that could go to CBO. The Republicans will vote on, right after voting to repeal Obamacare, vote on the Paul Ryan health care bill. I don't see that happening, but again, I might eat my words for saying that.
Well, and I don't know how you left off on tort reform, because of course that solves everything.
Right.
See, all of this sort of basket of ideas, what they have in common, number one, is that they're really expensive. It's health savings accounts, all of these things that return the costs back onto the insured, right, rather than putting them on the marketplace. And they're really not popular. So Republicans are basically saying we're going to take away something that as of January 1st people will actually tangibly have and replace it with something they must even understand people don't want. Does this make any sense?
I mean, I don't know why Bill Kristol is walking around talking on behalf of Paul Ryan, as if Paul Ryan is going to swoop in on a unicorn.
He's going to be greeted as a liberator.
Republican, right? He's going to come down on a jet landing. I do think that the reason that this is unlikely to happen, and Brian is unlikely to eat his words, and I will eat my words too if I'm wrong, is that we're going into the midterms. As you mentioned, these are tremendously unpopular ideas. To the extent that they were in the Ryan budget, they were a liability for Republicans in 2012. I just don't see them giving the opportunity for people to say they're going to take away this kind of coverage or they're going to hurt seniors.
Right.
And by the way, the only way Paul Ryan comes out and actually introduces a piece of legislation with these ideas is if he decides not to run for president in 2016. So that'll be a good telltale sign of Ryan's ambitions come next year.
Yeah, pro tip for Republicans. Never let Bill Kristol speak for you on anything. But he's always wrong. Exactly. McKay, Coppins, Erin Carmon, Brian.